Coming in at number 10 today is Lord Mar-Vell. Mar-Vell of the Kree was Marvel Comics' original Captain Marvel, and he was also the first Marvel superhero to permanently pass away when he succumbed to cancer in 1982's The Death of Captain Marvel. The character has reappeared as visions or in flashbacks and obviously in alternate realities, but the one we will focus on today is Mar-Vell of the Cancerverse. It's just a really cool and creative idea. Basically, on his infamous deathbed, the many angled ones contact and corrupt the dying Mar-Vell, granting him new powers which he used to transmute the other heroes, and with Marvel as their lord, they took down the Avatar of Death itself, which in turn completely destroyed Death, allowing the many angled ones to invade their reality.
Number 9. Ultron. Ultron was created by writer Roy Thomas and artist John Buscema, and made his first appearance in Avengers issue number 54 back in 1968. He's an advanced AI with a highly intelligent and malevolent personality, initially created by Dr. Henry Pym, the original Ant-Man. As a peacekeeping robot, Ultron eventually gained sentience and became obsessed with the idea of eliminating humanity, viewing it as the root cause of conflict and suffering in the entire world. He possesses superhuman strength, an incredibly high level of intelligence, durability, and the ability to upgrade and improve himself, making him a very scary villain by my view of things. As an artificial intelligence, Ultron has the ability to control and manipulate advanced technology, and often creates armies of robotic drones called Ultron Sentries to carry out his plans, with his primary goal being to replace humanity with an entire race of robotic beings he calls Ultronics. Now, unlike many villains who have, human motivations or emotions, Ultron's cold, calculating nature, devoid of human empathy or conscience, makes him particularly chilling. Once again, he views humans as inherently flawed and disposable. Outside of just the comics, the possibility of a real-life Ultron raises existential questions about the potential dangers of creating advanced AI and the consequences of unchecked technological progress, which is something that terrifies me on a regular basis. Overall, Ultron's combination of intelligence, ruthlessness, technological prowess, and his lack of human qualities contributes to his reputation as a genuinely scary and memorable villain in the Marvel Universe.
Number 8. The Void. Similar to Lord Mar-Vell, the Void is essentially taking the strongest and brightest character and creating a villain that is a sick and twisted version of that. A large part of what makes the Sentry so much more interesting is that while he is essentially like a god-like superhero who inspired all the other heroes, he also has a dark persona called the Void. The Void went on a rampage that took the lives of around 1 million people and almost destroyed Manhattan itself, and so the Sentry made the decision, with other heroes like Reed Richards and Doctor Strange, to cause the entire world to forget about the Sentry himself. Now, in New Avengers from 2004 and 2005, the Sentry comes back to the world, and through a series of events, the Void also returns. Full rosters of the Avengers, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four all went to take on the Void, and they couldn't do a damn thing. Only the Sentry himself could really subdue the Void, and it, in classic supervillain fashion, vowed to just come back. And it totally did. In this siege event, Norman Osborn decided to attack Asgard, and he used the Sentry to do this. The problem is, the Sentry ended up unleashing the Void, and it totally obliterated Asgard completely, taking out Loki in the process. This did actually branch off into a what-if story where the Void was never stopped and destroyed every superhero on Earth, and then went off into the universe to basically do the same thing everywhere else.
Number 7. Dracula. This might be my vampire-loving bias coming into play, but I think the way Dracula is portrayed in the Marvel Comics is quite scary, and that's coming from someone that's usually more enamored with him than scared by him. Hey, to each their own. So Dracula is a prominent character in the comics, and he's portrayed as, the classic vampire figure. So the classy vampire made his first appearance in Tomb of Dracula in 1972, which was created by writer Marv Wolfman and artist Gene Colan. This comic series, along with many other Marvel horror titles of the era, contributed to the resurgence of interest in horror comics. Now, he's based on the classic Bram Stoker depiction of the centuries-old vampire, cursed with immortality and supernatural powers. Like many traditional vampires, Dracula possesses superhuman strength, speed, agility, the ability to hypnotize and control the minds of his victims, transform into a bat or other creatures, and has an aversion to, the usual sunlight, garlic, crosses. He can also regenerate from most injuries, except for those inflicted by wooden stakes, through the heart, or exposure to sunlight. Dracula is often portrayed as the lord and ruler of Earth's vampires, commanding a vast army of followers and seeking to expand his dominion over both the human and vampire worlds. Now, Dracula has clashed with numerous Marvel superheroes over the years, and these confrontations often involve battles against his little minions as as well. If that isn't scary enough for you, Dracula's curse of immortality is deeply unsettling, since, he can't be killed by any conventional means. As a vampire, Dracula feeds on the life source of the living, and his ability to hypnotize and control the minds of his victims adds quite the psychological dimension to the fear he instills. Hey, loss of free will and autonomy is a terrifying concept. One notable encounter occurred in the storyline Avengers 185 and 86, published in 1979, when Dracula targets the Avengers after becoming obsessed with the Scarlet Witch. And I can't say I blame him for falling in love with her. Granted, his attempt to make her his bride leads to quite the confrontation.
Number 6. Null. Null existed long before even the Celestials in the 6th incarnation of the multiverse, where he existed in basically nothingness. But when the Celestials created the 7th multiverse, Null was mad that he got woken up. So he created the all-black Necro Sword and beheaded a Celestial. For this insane feat of power, he was banished to another void of nothingness, where he improved on the sword and eventually broke out into the universe, taking out various gods until he lost the Necro Sword after being defeated by a mysterious god of light. Null then goes on to make more and more symbiotes. Yes, the symbiotes like Venom and Carnage, who all share a hive mind under the control of Null himself. These symbiotes, who are all terrifying in their own right, eventually rebel and imprison Null inside the symbiote homeworld, Clintar. In the 2020 King in Black story, Null escapes, again, and heads to Earth, where he faces off against literally all the heroes and even some of the villains. He's one of the strongest villains in Marvel Comics. He is immortal, super strong, instantly heals, can create an unlimited amount of symbiotes, some of which who have been incredibly powerful on their own, and he can control them all. The Silver Surfer had to use all the reserves of the power cosmic to just temporarily stop Null. Thor, using the power cosmic and the Thor Force, was no match for Null at all. Null has awoken, enslaved, and controlled Celestials, and even defeated the Sentry, ripping him in half and absorbing the Void, who we just talked about. The only thing that defeated him was Eddie Brock's Venom wielding the Unipower, which is Captain Universe, the protector of the universe, and the opposite to literally everything that Null represents.
Number 5. The Apocalypse Twins. So this duo made their first appearance in issue number 5 of Uncanny Avengers, which was only published in 2013, ergo making them the most recent villains to come into the universe that I'll be discussing today. So they're mutants and the twin descendants of the big supervillain Apocalypse, so yay! Being bad comes pretty honestly to them. Okay, technically their real names are Uriel and Iman, and they were initially created by writer Rick Remender and artist Olivier Coipel, but Apocalypse Twins does sound infinitely cooler. So they were raised by Clan Akaba, a cult dedicated to their dear dad, which aimed to bring about the return of the powerful mutant leader. In terms of specific scary powers, Uriel possesses the ability to manipulate and transmute organic matter, including the power to heal and create life, while Iman has time manipulation abilities, allowing her to see into the future and alter the time stream. The duo are skilled manipulators who use their powers and charisma to sway others to their cause, just like, your everyday narcissists. So that's another little tick on the pass list from me. The twins believed that they could save mutant kind by eliminating threats to mutants and humankind alike, and had a twisted vision of a better world and sought to achieve it through drastic means. I hate sounding like a broken record, but jeepers. Look, a perfect world does not exist when created by force. In terms of, the hell they've unleashed specifically on the Avengers, they created a team of the 4 Horsemen of Death to execute their plans and clashed with the Avengers and the X-Men, leading to a major conflict known as the Ragnarok Now storyline. The storylines involving the Apocalypse Twins had lasting repercussions in the Marvel Universe, affecting relationships among mutants and superheroes. Their parentage plays obviously a very significant role in their menacing presence. As the offspring of Apocalypse, one of the most powerful and iconic villains in Marvel history, their genetic lineage implies an inherent potential for immense power and malevolence.
Number 4. Chthon. Chthon stands as one of the most powerful demons in existence in Marvel Comics, and his ancient origins make him comparable to the very archetype of evil itself. He predates even the likes of Mephisto and is often regarded as the closest embodiment of the devil in demonology in Marvel Comics. Chthon and his Ngarai once ruled over Earth until they faced an assault by the angel Lucifer, an event that occurred long before Lucifer's rebellion against heaven and his ascent to rule over hell as the devil. Chthon's influence extends to the very roots of dark supernatural entities, including witches, werewolves, and vampires. He holds dominion over the most potent form of magic, known as chaos magic, the same mystical force harnessed by the Scarlet Witch herself. To put this into perspective, Scarlet Witch has reshaped the whole of reality with just a fraction of Chthon's power. His counterpart, Oshter, is one of the essential components of the Vishanti, which is a triumvirate that actively opposes Chthon and supplies Doctor Strange with his power. In response to Chthon's malevolent dark hold, world, they created the Book of Vishanti, a beacon of light against the Book of Darkness. Even powerful beings such as Dormammu and Mephisto invoke Chthon's name when casting their most formidable spells. Chthon's presence alone nearly corrupted and permanently incapacitated the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange. Defeating him is an arduous task, and even when achieved, it often results in his banishment back to his personal dimension, the other realm, where he's basically untouchable.
Number 3, Korvac. So Michael Korvac, commonly known as Korvac, first appeared in issue number 3 of Giant-Sized Avengers back in 1975. Created by writer Steve Gerber and artist Jim Starlin, Korvac is quite the complex character with a unique and powerful storyline. He started as an ordinary human computer technician, but underwent a transformation after encountering the Badoon, an alien race. This transformation granted him incredible powers, including, energy manipulation, telekinesis, and matter transmutation, making him pretty near godlike in terms of abilities. Yikes! Korvac possesses nearly limitless powers, including, once again, the ability to manipulate reality itself. He's also not only physically powerful, but incredibly intelligent. Driven by a desire for order and perfection, he embarked on a quest to reshape the universe according to his own vision. While his motives weren't purely evil, the way he pursued them brought him into conflict with the Avengers, ergo how he earned a spot on our list today. One of his most notable storylines, which was the Korvac saga, is a pivotal moment in Marvel Comics history, since it challenged the Avengers on multiple levels, both morally and physically, and had pretty far-reaching consequences. Once again, Korvac's godlike powers, intelligence, and the existential threats he posed to the entire universe made him a pretty memorable villain. His character is a great example of how complexity and moral ambiguity can add depth to a supervillain, making him more than just, a one-dimensional antagonist.
Number 2, Carnage. The red symbiotes always seem to be the worst of the worst, and the one that would be born from Venom himself seems to be the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst. When Eddie Brock was briefly detached from the Venom symbiote, he was imprisoned, and his cellmate was none other than Cletus Cassidy, a psychotic killer serving 11 consecutive life sentences in Rikers Island. When Venom showed up and bust Eddie out of prison, it produced its first offspring as a result of Thanos seeking the Infinity Gems out in space. I don't know how those two connect, but that's just what happened. This offspring would be Carnage, and it was left in the cell when Venom and Eddie escaped, bonding with Cletus Cassidy through a wound in his hand. Meaning, the bond they formed was on a blood level, and it would be nearly impossible to break that. Despite that, there have been other characters that have taken on the symbiote. Norman Osborn was a notable one when he became the Red Goblin and was absolutely terrifying. And then I would be silly to not mention that the Grendel Dragon symbiote had part of itself merge with Carnage to create an incredibly terrifying version of the symbiote known as Dark Carnage that absolutely put up a hell of a fight against Venom and others. Now, Carnage is back yet again, and he is reaching a level of power that puts him on the cosmic map as he is constantly upgrading himself with all kinds of tech and magic to be able to face Eddie Brock, who has become the King in Black of the symbiote race.
Number 1, Thanos. Created by writer and artist Jim Starlin, Thanos made his first appearance in Iron Man issue number 55 back in 1973. He's known for his distinctive appearance, and as a towering purple-skinned alien with a heavily muscled physique and deep-set glowing eyes, yeah, that makes sense. Thanos is obsessed with the concept of death and seeks to impress Mistress Death, a personification of death in the Marvel Universe, and visually speaking, I can't blame him for wanting to impress her. To gain her favor, he often engages in grandiose and destructive acts, including seeking to wipe out half of all life in the universe. Thanos possesses a vast array of superhuman abilities, including super strength, durability, and agility, not to mention that he's highly intelligent and a strategic mastermind. Despite being a villain, he exhibits moral complexity and genuinely believes that his actions are necessary for the greater good, even if they involve mass destruction. The level of delusion there might just be what scares me the most. Oh, and tiny thing, Thanos also poses a cosmic level threat to the entire universe, since his plans often involve consequences on a cosmic scale, making him a particularly dangerous foe. Nope.
At number 10 is Ultron. Ultron, the AI antagonist from the Avengers, delves into the intriguing realm of human-robot interaction. Created by Tony Stark in the MCU, but was actually the mindchild of Hank Pym in the original comics, its prime directive is achieving world peace, and surmises that the only way that would be possible is to eliminate humanity. Ultron's self-improving nature grants it exponential growth in power and intellect. This villain proves relentless thanks to its ability to adapt, infiltrate networks, networks and upgrade itself like a superhero Skynet. Its adamantium exoskeleton renders it nearly indestructible, and it can transfer its consciousness across different row-bodies. Row-bodies? I thought that was clever. Ultron embodies the fear of technology gone awry, posing a formidable challenge to Earth's mightiest heroes. Can they triumph over an enemy that evolves faster than they can strategize? If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support this channel by pressing like, subscribing to the channel, and ringing that notification bell. At number 9 is Baron Zemo. Baron Zemo is a cold and calculated strategist in the Marvel Universe. First appearing in the comics back in '64, this mastermind completely lacked superhuman abilities, relying instead on heightened intellect and resourcefulness. Zemo single-handedly orchestrated the Avengers' downfall from the shadows by exploiting their weaknesses and triggering internal conflicts. His Machiavellian approach showcases that physical power isn't the sole path to supremacy. With a tragic backstory and penchant for manipulation, Zemo remains an enduring antagonist. Whether it's through psychological warfare or intricate schemes, he serves as a reminder that sometimes the most formidable adversaries come not from superhuman might, but instead from within the human psyche. At number 8 is Kang the Conqueror. Hailing from the pages of Marvel Comics, Kang is a time-traveling, history-manipulating enigma. His real name is, well, that's a bit tricky. You see, he has a whole bunch of identities due to his time-traveling shenanigans across different eras. Or, I mean, dimension hopping, depending on how you want to look at it. In the MCU, Marvel is treating alternate timelines and alternate dimensions like they're the same thing, so we'll just have to deal with it. But I digress. Off the top of my head, he goes by either Nathaniel Richards, Rama Tut, Scarlet Centurion, Immortus, Kid Immortus, Iron Lad, Mr. Griffin, a Doctor Doom, and of course, Kang the Conqueror, thus making him probably one of the most convoluted characters in comic book history, as there are innumerable iterations of the character spanning countless eons. For example, there are versions of Nathaniel who become Rama Tut before becoming Kang, others who after becoming Kang become Rama Tut again, only to then become either Immortus or Scarlet Centurion, and or back to Kang. Some flip between Rama Tut and Kang before becoming Mr. Griffin, while other Kangs don't become Kang at all and instead become Iron Lad. Yeah, it's really messy. And as you can already guess, what makes Kang truly interesting is his mastery over time, hopping around like a temporal tourist gone mad. With advanced future tech and extreme intellect, partly on account that he's a descendant of Mr. Fantastic, he's a challenge that is as much a puzzle as he is a powerhouse. His various incarnations, alternate selves, and mind-bending plots make him a true headache for our beloved Avengers. Wrapping your head around Kang's complexities might require a time machine of your own. At number 7 is Thanos. When we talk about Avengers villains who are a tough nut to crack, Thanos inevitably leaps into the picture. I mean, we're not just dealing with your everyday antagonist here, we're talking about the Mad Titan himself. Thanos is like the ultimate cosmic conundrum, most notably wielding the Infinity Gauntlet and its mind-bending gems. With that kind of power, he can reshape reality, control time, and alter the very fabric of existence. The Avengers had their hands filled dealing with this purple-skinned powerhouse. Remember that snap? The one that wiped out like, I don't know, half of all life in the universe? Yeah, that was this guy. So taking on Thanos is like confronting the embodiment of unstoppable force. When he's on the scene, you can bet that things are gonna get cosmically complicated. At number 6 is Doctor Doom. Peering into the vast realm of the Avengers villains, one figure emerges with an aura of unyielding power, Doctor Doom. Hailing from the enigmatic land of Latveria, Doctor Doom is a multifaceted antagonist whose mastery in both science and sorcery is unparalleled. Clad in signature metal armor, Doom's intellect fuels his pursuits of dominion, rendering him a formidable adversary. His indomitable will, fortified by tragic origins, propels him in his quest for ultimate control. From reshaping reality to the Infinity Gauntlet to manipulating time itself, Doom's ambitions knows no bounds. A complex amalgamation of genius, magic, and ambition, Doctor Doom stands as the enduring testament to the unexplored depths of villainy within the Avengers universe. At number 5 is Galactus. Galactus is a colossal cosmic entity in the Marvel universe, emerging as the embodiment of cosmic balance. This being, beyond the constraints of good or evil as we perceive them, stands as a force of nature, a devourer of worlds. Dressed in his signature colossal purple and and blue armor, he's a figure that transcends conventional hero-villain narratives. Galactus doesn't scheme like Loki or seek power like Thanos, he merely exists to sustain his own existence by consuming planets. With an insatiable hunger, he wields the power cosmic, allowing control over reality itself. The Avengers, despite their tenacity, often find themselves helpless against this force. They face cosmic threats, but Galactus remains unparalleled. His very existence challenges our anthropocentric perspective, underscoring the universe's grandiosity and our limited understanding within it. At number 4 is Molecule Man. Owen Reese, a character who truly bends your mind quite literally. Imagine having the power to control, well, molecules. Everything around us, matter itself, is made up of these tiny things, and Molecules Man's ability allows him to reshape reality on a fundamental level. He can disintegrate, reshape, or recreate matter with just a thought. But here's the kicker, his power isn't just limited to objects. He can alter time itself, space, I didn't know those were made of molecules, and even other superpowers. Now you might be thinking, how on earth could anyone stop someone who could manipulate reality at its core? Well, it's a mind-boggling concept, and definitely one that the Avengers are gonna have to figure out a way around. At number 3 is Red Skull. This formidable antagonist possesses an indomitable will that echoes throughout history. Initially locking horns with Captain America during the Second War of the World, Red Skull's obsession with power and ominous association with Hydra paint a portrait of unwavering malevolence. But what makes Red Skull truly intriguing is his resilience. Over the years, he's demonstrated an uncanny ability to rebound from apparent defeat, like a persistent specter haunting the Marvel Universe. His consciousness survived, transcending mortality, finding new vessels to embody his wickedness. From Johann Schmidt to various successors, the essence of Red Skull endures, emphasizing the notion that some adversaries are simply impervious to the confines of time and defeat. At number 2 is Magneto. With the ability to manipulate electromagnetic fields, his power transcends the conventional. But it's not just his raw might that sets him apart, it's his motivation. Crafted through tragic experiences, Magneto's actions are propelled by a deep-seated desire to protect mutant kind from the looming shadow of human oppression. His conviction blurs the line between villainy and an almost understandable quest for survival. So can Magneto truly be stopped? It's a paradoxical question, for while his actions are perceived as antagonistic, they stem from a place of harrowing resonance. Perhaps understanding his origin is the key to predicting his next move, and in a realm where right and wrong often collide, Magneto's indomitable spirit continues to both confound and compel. And at number 1 is Morgan Le Fay. Hailing from Arthurian legends and weaving her way into Marvel Comics, she's a force to be reckoned with. What sets her apart? It's not just her mastery over ancient magic, but her time-traveling escapades that truly bend the mind. Imagine a villain who's been a thorn in the Avengers' side across centuries. With a knack for manipulating reality, controlling minds, and wielding dark spells, Morgan Le Fay is a puzzle the team can't quite solve. But what's truly baffling is her immortality. How does one truly stop someone who's danced through time, cheating its very flow? And as the Avengers continue to battle this enigmatic enchantress, it's a reminder that some foes are beyond the grasp of conventional heroics, slipping through time's fingers like sand.
Number 10, the UFOs. The UFOs are a group of Hulk villains who wanted to recreate the accident that gave the Fantastic Four their powers. They hired the engineers who built the Fantastic Four's original ship and set off, hoping to be pelted by cosmic rays. Their ground facility was discovered by Bruce Banner, who thought the team were being exposed to the rays by accident and brought the shuttle down. The team resented the fact that Banner tried to save them, as they thought that longer exposure would have made them even more powerful. This resentment caused them to vow revenge on Banner and the Hulk. The UFOs have 4 members: Ironclad, X-Ray, Vapor, and Vector. Ironclad was transformed by the cosmic rays into organic metal that he can control, making him able to increase or decrease his weight at will. This allows him to hover in the air or come down on his enemies with the force of a mountain. He also has superhuman strength and durability. X-Ray was transformed into living energy and therefore can't really be hurt. He can fly, turn invisible, and emit radiation blasts, as well as negative gamma rays, which allow him to transform Hulk back into his human form. I suppose he could also use this power to give most of the Avengers cancer. Vapor can transform into any gas she wants, usually using it to poison her enemies. Vector has telekinetic powers which he can use to move objects, as well as focus into blasts, which have shown to be able to flay most of the Hulk's skin. Sure, the Hulk has managed to take them out on his own, but if they can get him off the board with X-Ray's powers, the other Avengers will have a challenge taking out this supergroup gone bad.
In at number 9 is the Sinister Six. Spider-Man is one of the best heroes Marvel has to offer. Maybe not the most powerful, but arguably the most popular and inspiring. But but gosh darn it if he doesn't have a knack for absolutely ticking off his villains with incredibly good and some might say annoying quips. He drives villains insane, which is likely why his 6 greatest villains came together to try and bring him down for good. The original team was made up of Dr. Octopus, Electro, Kraven the Hunter, Mysterio, Sandman, and the Vulture, and each one of these villains can arguably give the Avengers a hell of a time on their own, but together they are a force to be reckoned with. There have been multiple different versions of this team with other villains swapping out, and sometimes they've even had more than just 6 villains on the team. Dr. Octopus, Electro, and the Vulture are usually there, but some other strong villains who have shown up on this team include Green Goblin and Hobgoblin, Lizard, Rhino, Scorpion, Shocker, Venom, and Swarm. Now, I'm keeping them all the way up here because honestly, they get beaten way too often by Spider-Man alone, and they have a huge weakness in the form of being incredibly bad at cooperating with one another. Although, when the Sinister 12 came for Spider-Man, he needed the help of Black Cat, Captain America, Iron Man, Daredevil, Yellow Jacket, and the Fantastic Four for them to hold their own, which is a hell of a feat for the villains. I'll give them that.
Number 8. Alpha Strike. Due to my compulsive need to slowly turn this into an Alpha Flight channel, I present to you Alpha Strike. Alpha Strike is a team led by the Master of Evil, who with a group of villains and a few mind-controlled heroes managed to take over Canada and nearly destroy Alpha Flight in the process. Members of this team include a brainwashed Vindicator who has a battle suit that allows her to lift heavy objects, fly, teleport herself westward at the speed of the Earth's rotation, and fire energy beams that can incinerate a person with ease. Other members include Purple Woman, who like her father the Purple Man can compel people to do whatever she tells them, Citadel, who has a healing factor and adamantium armor grafted onto his body, as well as super strength so powerful he was able to send Colossus flying, the Wendigo, who routinely gives the Hulk a run for his money, and Ranark, who is a powerful user of dark magic, who was once a shaman who tried to claim enough power to become a god. And to anyone who doesn't think the Master would be a threat to the Avengers, I remind you that he already was, as it was he, disguised as Canada's ambassador to the Alpha Flight space program, who manipulated the Inhuman Profiler's evidence in order to isolate Captain Marvel and help cause the second Marvel Civil War. Number 7. The Liberators. Hailing from the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, the Liberators are a group of supervillains who, with under-the-table support from the governments of Russia, France, China, North Korea, Iran, and Syria, invaded the United States. In an effort to counter the United States super team, the Ultimates, the team consisted of each country's version of a super soldier, as well as thousands of mercenaries who each had battle suits that granted them super strength and flight, but shortened their lifespans to only 1 month. Due to extensive planning before the invasion to counter the Ultimates, the Liberators were able to successfully invade in just a few days, taking out the Fantastic Four, the Ultimates reserves, as well as Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Spider-Man. The Colonel is an Iranian version of Captain America, having a similar power set. This universe's version of the Abomination is from China, but is otherwise very similar to his 616 counterpart. Crimson Dynamo is a Chinese Iron Man who has a battle suit as well as 50 giant-sized duplicates that he can control. Perrin is the Russian equivalent of Thor, sporting a hammer and a sickle. Hurricane is a North Korean speedster. The ultimate version of Swarm is a mutant woman from Syria who can control millions of bugs at a time. Schizoid Man is the Frenchman who can duplicate himself in a manner similar to Multiple Man. And rounding out the team is the God of Mischief himself, Loki, who doesn't have a personal stake in the fight, but thought it could be fun to help start World War III. Between all these superpowered foes and their augmented army, the Avengers of Earth 616 would have a hard time overcoming these Liberators.
And at number 6 though is the Crime Syndicate of America. Why talk about the Marvel version of the Evil Justice League when we can just talk about the actual Evil Justice League? I don't believe I ever said we had to talk strictly about Marvel villain teams here. Anyways, no, DC's Earth 3 is home to the Crime Syndicate of America, an evil, power-obsessed, and incredibly powerful version of the Justice League that were even strong enough to almost completely take over the actual Earth Zero of DC Comics. Where the Squadron Sinister has Hyperion, who is basically a poo-poo version of Superman, the Crime Syndicate has an actual kryptonite-addicted Superman who pushes around the moon. But on top of that, they have Deathstorm with the Firestorm Matrix powers, Grid, which is basically Cyborg, Johnny Quick, the homicidal Flash, the cowardly Power Ring, who would probably fall to the Avengers honestly, Superwoman, who while extremely powerful was also extremely manipulative, and obviously Owlman, Thomas Wayne Jr., and his sadistic version of Alfred Pennyworth. I would actually love to see how the Avengers fare against this group of villains, because I think it would be really interesting. Let me know your thoughts down below.
Number 5. The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. A frequent foe of the X-Men, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants is a group formed by Magneto with the goal of either eradicating or subjugating humanity so that mutant kind can take their place as the dominant species on Earth. While membership has fluctuated over the years, it has played host to villains such as Magneto, who has been able to take on the Avengers by himself in the past, as well as Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, who of course later joined the Avengers. Some of the other members they have had over the years include Mystique, Toad, the Juggernaut, the Blob, Pyro, Mastermind, and Sabretooth, just to name a few. With these powerful team members and their Omega level leader, it would take an impressive roster of Avengers to triumph over this Brotherhood. I mean, what's Iron Man going to do against the Master of Magnetism other than die horribly? The Brotherhood consistently gives the X-Men a run for their money, and frankly, the X-Men are usually way more powerful than the Avengers, so Earth's mightiest heroes would have one hell of a fight on their hands. In order to even stand a chance, they would have to be fighting with a roster that includes Captain Marvel and the Hulk.
Coming to number 4 is the Dark Avengers. Okay, so after the events of Civil War, Iron Man became head of S.H.I.E.L.D. This was pretty quickly followed by the Secret Invasion event where the entire world was basically infiltrated by the Skrulls under Tony Stark's watch. That led the people of the world to not trust him as S.H.I.E.L.D's leader, and so Norman Osborn of all people was chosen as the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and somehow a lot of people thought that was a good idea. Norman did a mass rebranding, turning S.H.I.E.L.D. into Hammer, which doesn't actually stand for anything, it just sounds cool. His Thunderbolts became a Black Ops team, and a bunch of Avengers quit, which prompted him to take on new members. Bullseye, Moonstone, and Venom, who are all loyal members of the Thunderbolts, came in dressing up as Hawkeye, Miss Marvel, and Spider-Man respectively. Two extremely strong Avengers, Ares God of War and Robert Reynolds the Sentry, both remained on the team. Then there was also Daken, the son of Wolverine, adopting a costume like his dad's, and Novar, a Kree who took on the Captain Marvel title. Lastly, Osborn himself suited up in a suit of Iron Man armor, but with the Captain America red, white, and blue, plus a star, dubbing himself the Iron Patriot. A team that includes Sentry is almost always a powerhouse, but then you add these other team members and manipulate Sentry to unleashing the Void. The heroes had their hands full just trying to deal with these Dark Avengers and Norman Osborn's hammer. And in at number 3 is the Horsemen of Apocalypse. Every time the ancient, incredibly powerful mutant Apocalypse shows up to cause a headache for the heroes, he is almost always accompanied by his horsemen. Extremely powerful mutants, and sometimes non-mutants, chosen by Apocalypse to receive biological, genetic, and celestial enhancements that push their power to a substantially higher level. They can have their powers augmented or receive completely new powers altogether, whatever would help Apocalypse and whatever his current goal is. Some of the most powerful beings have been one of the Horsemen at some point. I'm talking characters like the Sentry, Hulk, Wolverine, Sunfire, Polaris, Psylocke, and Gambit. But even characters that hadn't existed before showed up as his Horsemen, and they were intense. Apocalypse's final Horseman team, for example, were all largely unheard of characters, but there was Decimus Furious, who was a giant Minotaur-looking guy from way back in the Roman Empire, Jeb Lee, who can give people cancer and cause their flesh to be eaten away by playing on the drums, which is just odd. Sanjar Javid could transmit a whole spectrum of different deadly diseases via metal, and then there was Ishizumi, who could detach her jaw and send an absolutely massive and terrifying swarm of Yume beetles that could devour or dismember her target and steal their memories. Like what? And I haven't even spoken about the first Horseman, and I'm not going to.
Number 2, the Black Order. The goal of the Mad Titan Thanos is to wage war on life itself in an effort to impress the woman he loves, who also happens to be deaf. In order to help him with this goal, he has assembled a team of aliens to serve as his generals, the Black Order. Members include Corvus Glaive, who is not only a tactical genius, but immortal as long as his blade remains intact. Hela, the goddess of death, the Primordial Elder, the Challenger, who can access residual energy energy from the Big Bang, the telekinetic sorcerer Ebony Maw with persuasive powers, Black Swan who can shoot optic blasts and has so much strength that she escaped from a prison designed to hold a Herald of Galactus, Black Dwarf who is pretty much just big and strong, and Proxima Midnight who is an expert combatant with super strength, endurance, and near invulnerability. They were memorably featured in the Infinity War movie and caused just as much if not more trouble for the heroes in the comics as they do in the film.
And in at number 1 is the Cabal in Secret Wars. You know, if you create a group for the sole purpose of destroying planets, you know they have got to be pretty powerful. And the Cabal, created by Namor the Submariner, are absolutely powerful. So during Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, these things called incursions started to happen, orchestrated by the Beyonders. Essentially, two multiverses would crash together, destroying them both, and the focal point for that crash was the Earth itself. When the incursions started to threaten the multiverse, Namor had a different view from the rest of the Illuminati, and during the incursion with Earth 4290001, Namor destroyed that Earth to save both universes and save his Earth. Now when the next incursion presented itself right after that, the Illuminati were going to just let it happen instead of destroying an entire alternate Earth. Standing against that, Namor teamed up with Maximus the Mad of the Inhumans, and then together they freed the prisoners of the Illuminati, which included Proxima Midnight, Corvus Glaive, Terrax, the Herald of Galactus from Earth 13054, Black Swan, and the Mad Titan Thanos himself. Basically, this is like the Black Order from the last point, plus some insanely powerful additions. And they are very powerful. This group of villainous powerhouses were sanctioned by the United Nations to destroy the alternate Earths that appeared during incursions. While Namor had planned to use explosions to destroy the other Earths, Thanos, who pretty much took control of the group, led them in what was basically a complete and utter slaughter. After Namor tried to betray the group during another incursion, they instead became trapped on the other Earth and escaped to the ultimate 1610 universe, where they welcomed an evil alternate version of Reed Richards, known as the Maker, onto that team, making them even more powerful. When they survived the end of the multiverse and end up on Battleworld, this group was strong enough to face an army of Thors, but they didn't really stand a chance against God Emperor Doom. But coming in at number 10 is Hydra. To call Hydra a team isn't exactly a full truth. This organization is and has been comprised of not just notable villains like the Red Skull, Baron von Strucker, Gorgon, Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, Viper, Arnim Zola, Baron Helmut Zemo, Kingpin, Taskmaster, Absorbing Man, Bullseye, Crossbones, and many others, but there are also countless nameless henchmen and agents who all spout "Hail Hydra." A notable mention going to Bob from the Deadpool comics. You're a good guy. As one of the commenters on part 1 made note of, Hydra isn't so powerful in the sense that they can absolutely obliterate foes, but they have something a lot of villains seem to lack: patience. The slow burn is their bread and butter, with slowly enacted plans that eventually lead them to almost secure world domination. Characters like Thor could punch as many dudes as he wants, but it's the members of Hydra who we don't even know about that are the real problem. What is actually insane to me is that Hydra has actually been around since pre-human time. It was a group of cold-blooded reptile-like aliens that planted the seeds that would eventually give rise to Hydra, with our earliest records of Hydra dating back to 3rd Dynasty Egypt. And at number 9, the Marauders. I think that a lot of mutant villain teams can give the Avengers a headache. As a commenter said in the last video, there is a reason that villains like Magneto and Apocalypse say that mutants are the superior species. Well, one of the cooler mutant villain groups out there, in my humble opinion, would be the Marauders. Originally, the Marauders were a group of mutant mercenaries working for the villain Mr. Sinister. They were formed by Gambit in order to eradicate the population of physically undesirable mutants known as the Morlocks. To accomplish this task, Gambit called in Sabretooth, Arclight, Harpoon, Malice, Scalp Hunter, Scrambler, Vertigo, Riptide, Blockbuster, and Prism. The team has also been led by Magneto, Grey Crow, and Mystique at different points in time, and has also had villains like Ares, Chimera, Omega Sentinel, Polaris, Sunfire, and other unnamed soldiers. And as you might have guessed from Mr. Sinister's involvement, there have also been clones of these characters on the team as well. This group of mercenaries may not seem like the most powerful, but with such ruthless ruthless and unforgiving characters, they could easily do some damage to the Avengers. On a side note, if I hear someone bring up Rune King Thor again as if he was ever on the Avengers team with all that power, I want to lose it. He was around for like 5 minutes and it was to stop Ragnarok and then he just went away. In at number 8 is the Hellfire Club. Similar to Hydra, again, the Hellfire Club are not exactly a team, but kind of. And also like Hydra, they play a much more subtle game in terms of their villainous ways. The Hellfire Club has been around since the 1700s, beginning as a British social elite club that would provide luxuries to its members that were not exactly legal or not exactly morally upstanding. But they had a secondary goal of putting together their financial wealth and political power to influence the world from the background for their own goals. While it has many members in different cities, some of which are just regular wealthy people, the group is run by its inner circle, many of whom are indeed powered, and more often than not, they are mutants. This group takes their names after different chess pieces with the black and white kings, queens, bishops, and knights. Now we've already talked about one of them with the White Queen Emma Frost, my bae. But there have been many other members and not all of them have been villainous. So specifically, we're going to talk about the more evil ones. Names like Sebastian Shaw, Elias Bogan, Blackheart, Tom Cassidy, Mystique, Magneto, Trevor Fitzroy, Norman Osborn, Ezekiel Stane, Jason Wingard, Mountjoy, and Emma Steed have all been part of the Hellfire Club. While it isn't really an evil group anymore, with most of the current group made up of heroes, in its prime days of villainy, it absolutely caused problems for the world's heroes. Whoa. Are you subscribed to Top 10 Nerd? I mean, if you're watching this video, I can't imagine there's a reason you shouldn't be. If you like this content, make sure you do subscribe and stay tuned because we put out more videos just like this one every single day. But in at number 7 is the Squadron Sinister. The Squadron Sinister was a whole team of supervillains created by the Grandmaster as basically copies of the Squadron Supreme of Earth 712. He turned people from Prime 616 universe into counterparts of those squadron members. These were Kinji Abatu, who became Dr. Spectrum, Kyle Richmond, who became Nighthawk, and Jim Sanders, who became Whizzer, aka Speed Demon. But he also created a version of Hyperion out of non-living extra-dimensional matter. Now, if you know anything about this group of heroes, then you know they are essentially a Marvel Comics parody of versions of DC's Justice League. So then, the Grandmaster pitted this very new powerful squadron against the Avengers in a game against Kang the Conqueror in Avengers number 70. And while they were defeated, they put up a hell of a fight, and if it weren't for the fact that they are villains, there's a possibility they could have came out on top in a different turn of events. Coming in at number 6 is Intelligentsia. While some teams have power in raw strength or battle prowess, Intelligentsia has brain power, which basically means they get away with things much more often and for much longer. The team is made up of some of the smartest villainous minds. The leader, MODOK, Mr. Sinister, Wizard, Dr. Doom, Egghead, Claw, Mad Thinker, and more have all at some point been a part of this group. Initially, they formed to exchange information between themselves, but then began collecting parts of the Library of Alexandria scattered in some of the most legendary places, because that's just how it works, and they even caused the arrival of the Beyonder. But in my humble opinion, the team became much cooler during World War Hulk. When Hulk came back to Earth, waging war on the planet, Leader brought the team together, and using their knowledge to hack into defense satellites and harness cosmic energy, they brought the hulking behemoth all the way down to the ground. Using this tech, they managed to figure out how to use cosmic energy and gamma radiation to create incredibly powerful beings like the Red Hulk, Red She-Hulk, A-Bomb, and Amadeus Cho. Although, this led to their defeat because they're still villains. But in World War Hulk, they managed to succeed where the heroes had failed, and that's saying something. Now we have the new Intelligentsia, and I'm excited to see them do something truly villainous and very cool. And in at number 5 is the Masters of Evil. The Masters of Evil have actually had about 8 different incarnations over their time in Marvel Comics, and because of that, they've had a large handful of powerful members that have gone up against the Avengers, Thunderbolts, and even the Guardians of the Galaxy. The original group was brought together by Baron Heinrich Zemo after he learned that Captain America had returned to the world. He put together a group of the Avengers' various teammates, different villains. So, on this original team, we had Black Knight, Nathan Garrett, Melter, and Radioactive Adaptive Man, and they chose to attack with Adhesive X, which was basically super glue, which I know how this sounds, but I promise they got way better. Allow me to list some of the other villains that have been a part of the Masters of Evil. We have Enchantress, Executioner, Ultron 5 as the Crimson Cowl, Dr. Octopus, Atlas, Absorbing Man, Bi-Beast, Bloodstone, Firebrand, Hellstrom, Claw, Moonstone, Satanish, Scorcher, Whiplash, Titania, Wonder Man, The Wrecking Crew, and Yellowjacket. And that's just the big names that stand out to me. Of course, these are all in different combinations with varying levels of effectiveness, but if coordinated properly, they have given the Avengers a tough time in the past, and they very likely could do it again. And in at number 4 is the Army of Evil. Is this cheating? Possibly. Do I care? Nope. Get at me, haters. The Army of Evil was essentially Baron Helmut Zemo taking his reformed Masters of Evil and creating an even bigger team of villains, all for the purpose of helping to expand the power and reach of his arch nemesis, Captain America. What? Yes, this wasn't the Captain America we are used to. This was an evil, twisted version of Captain America who was loyal to Hydra thanks to the Red Skull and his use of a sentient cosmic cube named Kobik. And that was only because Marvel decided to make Steve Rogers loyal to Hydra and then realized that no one wanted that. This Army of Evil consisted of Zemo and the current Masters of Evil alongside Absorbing Man, Baron Blood, Blackout, Blue Streak, the Circus of Crime, Count Nefaria, Cyclone, Dragonfly, Pharah, Graviton, Grey Gargoyle, Gypsy Moth, Hobgoblin, Jack-O-Lantern, Kraven the Hunter, Lady Bullseye, Living Laser, Madame Menace, Mr. Hyde, MODOK, Nitro, Regent, Scorcher, Serpent Solutions, Squid, the UFOs, Whirlwind, Wizard, and Yellowjacket, and they were sent to attack Midtown Manhattan to lure out America's superheroes, where Zemo would then use the Darkhold to trap the island in Dark Force. Number 3, the Cabal. In the last list, we spoke about the group called the Cabal that was formed by Namor the Submariner to combat the multiversal incursions. But for part 2, we're going to talk about the other Cabal. This version of the Cabal was a secret group created alongside the Dark Avengers by Norman Osborn when he became the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., which he renamed to Hammer. This group was basically the villainous version of the Illuminati, and it consisted of some pretty powerful villains. Obviously, we have Norman Osborn himself, who in my opinion is probably the weakest member of the group in terms of raw power, because next to him we had Emma Frost, an Omega-class telepath, the White Queen of the Hellfire Club, and sometimes headmistress of Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. We also had Namor the Submariner, who, well, I think he kinda sucks, but he's the king of Atlantis, Loki of Asgard, who was the whole reason the Avengers formed in the first place, the Hood, who was a skilled sorcerer and powerful crime lord, and as the icing on the cake, they had Dr. Doom of Latveria, who really doesn't even need much of an introduction. Taskmaster was also part of this group as well for a little bit, so yes, this team was highly capable. Unfortunately for them, their alliance was tenuous at best, as it usually is with villainous teams. And at number 2 is the Legion of Doom. So we talked about the crime syndicate from the DC universe, but what would be even more compelling than that would be to see how a group of actual Prime Earth DC villains would do against the Avengers. And why not pick the Legion of Doom as that group? The Legion of Doom is made up of probably the most prominent of the Justice League's individual villains. I mean, we've got Lex Luthor founding this team and being backed up by Black Manta, Cheetah, Gorilla Grodd, the Joker, and Sinestro. But that's just the original group. Currently, it consists of Amazo, Black Hand, Brainiac, Captain Boomerang, Captain Cold, Golden Glider, Heatwave, Punchline, Scarecrow, Vandal Savage, and Weather Wizard, plus all the original members who I just mentioned. And it at one point even had Black Adam, Mr. Freeze, and Ra's al Ghul. This team would absolutely crush the Avengers, and that's hard for me to even say because I definitely prefer Marvel over DC. There's just no doubt in my mind. Well, except, of course, if Joker does his usual thing and betrays them, or whatever, or they can't get along, or the heroes have to win because that's just how it goes with comic books. Barring those 3 things, they would crush. Anyways, in for number 1, and for my last trick, I will talk about a group of villains from neither Marvel or DC. No, for our number 1 spot, we're going to talk about the Viltrum Empire from Image Comics' Invincible series. Again, a loose definition of the word team, but I mean, if you're all from the same planet with the same goal of ensuring the survivability of your race, that's kind of like a team, a very large team. But the Avengers have faced off against entire races of species before, so I don't know. While they have faced off against other races, the Viltrumites, this is a race of absolutely mind-bogglingly strong humanoids who are next to impossible to take down and who just come back stronger after they heal. Just 3 Viltrumites were able to fly through a planet and completely obliterate it. The Grand Regent of the Viltrumites himself, Thrag, was able to tank some of the most powerful of the heroes that the Earth had to offer, and even the strongest of his own race were absolutely terrified of him. I mean, the final climactic battle between Invincible and Thrag saw the two going punch for punch inside of our sun, and it still took them a good little while to actually being worn down by that fight. This is a race of Superman-like beings the Avengers would not stand a tiny little chance against. Number 10, the Thunderbolts. There is a time in the comics where it looked like Earth had lost most of its heroes, and Baron Zemo saw this lull as the perfect time to organize a super team of his own. Although his crew, composed mostly of villains pretended to be a force for good, they originally had evil intentions. The MCU Zemo, played by Daniel Bruhl, definitely has the intelligence and financial resources to pull together a Thunderbolts crew. Daniel Bruhl's Zemo has already been portrayed in a more sympathetic light in 2021's The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and the Thunderbolts movie may see him continue to seek redemption for his past by spearheading a team of would-be heroes, or anti-heroes, or even possibly villains. It's also been shown that Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine is a major character in the movie. We've seen Contessa appear in several Phase 4 post-credit scenes already, recruiting characters like Florence Pugh's Yelena Belova and Wyatt Russell's John Walker to her mysterious cause. Contessa may be forming the Thunderbolts in response to the dissolution of the Avengers, but given the character's often treacherous nature in the comics, it's easy to imagine Contessa doing something villainous. I'm just imagining an eventual team-on-team fight like in Civil War instead of just having another big bad. Number 9, Nightmare. Originally hailing from the dream dimension, the demon known as Nightmare can imprison a being's astral form and torment them. There have been several hints of Nightmare lurking in the background. On Loki, Mobius appears to make reference to the villain's name, and although Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. might not be canon, it definitely introduced the concept of a dream dimension. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness made a statement about how dreams were actually visions into alternate universe versions of yourself, and with dreams comes nightmares. Imagine if Nightmare had been manipulating the dreams of someone like the Scarlet Witch to make her go a little bonkers. Nightmare is one of Doctor Strange's oldest foes, and it makes sense that he would show up, but I'm not entirely convinced he would be an Avengers level threat. Number 8, Mephisto. On that note, the Marvel Cinematic Universe does feel like it's preparing itself to embrace the darker elements of its comic book counterparts, with projects such as Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and Moon Knight out and about, and Blade on the way with the Black Knight semi-introduced, not to mention the Dweller in Darkness and Shang-Chi. The MCU is getting a darker side, and what's darker than some demons? And if we're talking demons, why not start with one a few of us thought was going to be showing up in the Loki show? Mephisto is the perfect villain to anchor that hell on earth conflict that seems to be coming for Doctor Strange and the other characters who also happen to be a part of the Midnight Suns, a team of mystically powered occult fighters. It would be a unique villain for the Avengers, or maybe an MCU Midnight Suns team to face. Number 7, Chthon. Last on the list of possible demons would have to be the Elder God Chthon. As the Earth's first black magician, he would make an excellent Doctor Strange villain, or even a mystical based threat like Mephisto or Nightmare. More than that though, he was the creator of the Darkhold, that dark magical book that first showed up in WandaVision and then more recently in the Multiverse of Madness where it corrupted the Scarlet Witch. Funnily enough, something similar happened in the comics too, only the Darkhold corrupted Wanda for the express purpose of releasing Chthon into the world. In the Darkhold story, it is Wanda who does eventually defeat Chthon with the quote-unquote help of Doctor Doom. And given her recent transgressions in WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness, it might be a nice way for her to redeem her character. Maybe. Number 6, Kang the Conqueror. Jonathan Majors will portray the notable villain of Kang the Conqueror in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania for the first time outside of the Loki series. But there's no way a villain of this threat level will stop there. Kang's advanced tech, large intellect, and ability to time travel means he can make intricate plans to attack enemies before they even know what hit them. One great story for the MCU to draw upon is Kang War. Now many fans wondered why the Avengers did not simply go back in time and de-life Thanos as a baby baby in Avengers Endgame, as kind of a joke, but this story follows up on that idea, but with a villain that can combat it. Kang's retaliation by going around attacking baby versions of the Avengers and erasing them from existence is an even darker version of the blip. Sam Wilson, Jane Foster, Peter Parker, and the daughter of Hank Pym and Vision are all members of the current Avengers roster and all play a part in the story. In addition to new faces we know are coming, like the Black Knight. Not only do the heroes match up, but it also provides an epic and compelling story about Kang, properly demonstrating the power that Kang wields while showing his influence on history. Number 5. Doctor Doom. Once Marvel announced a Fantastic Four film was on the horizon, they pretty much confirmed that we would see Doctor Doom, one of the most famous supervillains in Marvel's lineup. It's incredibly unlikely that they'd leave him out of the new adaptation. Although Doctor Doom was introduced as a Fantastic Four foe, he has the resources and power, both magical and technological, to take on the current MCU Avengers, easily. We can also easily see Earth's mightiest heroes meeting the MCU's Doom within the next few years. There's even the possibility of Doom becoming the next big bad of the MCU. Kevin Feige has been dropping some not so subtle hints about the possibility of Secret Wars taking place within the MCU, and no matter which version they adapt, Doctor Doom is a crucial character in all those stories. Personally, I hope it's the 2015 version, as we have already heard mention of the incursions from Reed Richards, and with the sacred timeline going into complete upheaval, it's possible that could be in an incursion starting event. Just give me God Emperor Doom already! Number 4. Magneto. It's hard to imagine Marvel introducing the X-Men into the MCU without also introducing Charles Xavier's #1 frenemy, Magneto. Magneto is such a key and imposing villain in the comics. He has been portrayed twice on the screen, with Michael Fassbender and Ian McKellen killing it both times. Furthermore than just the popularity of the character and the necessity for him to appear opposing the mutants, some insider gossip and possible rumors suggest that Magneto will be teaming up with none other than Doctor Doom in the 5th phase of Marvel. And not only does that completely make sense, it's also terribly cool to imagine. There isn't much to say, because if the MCU is getting mutants, this is kind of a no-brainer. Number 3. Galactus. In Eternals, we learn that unborn Celestials are planted inside planets across the universe, waiting for intelligent life to reach a point in which those Celestials can use that energy to be born, destroy said planet, and begin creating another sun that will power another galaxy in the place of the one destroyed. Being an ancient universe entity, Galactus is an all-powerful cosmic being that acts as a balance of power in the current universe. He does this by devouring planets throughout the cosmos as a source of energy to stay alive. It is more likely than not that Arishem the Judge, a Celestial, considers the death of a baby Celestial as a punishable offense. Galactus could be in the MCU as a tool the Celestials use to devour planets. Galactus often prides himself as a force of balance in the universe, and with Earth being such a powerhouse planet in the cosmos, its failed emergence is likely to upset the balance of things. Or, what if Galactus was actually hunting planets with the immense amount of energy a Celestial seed would provide? This cosmic being is known for having a huge appetite that can only be satisfied by consuming the energy of planets. With certain planets, including Earth, hosting a Celestial seed inside of them, a Herald of Galactus could view it as a great source of energy to keep Galactus fed. And that's not even mentioning the Fantastic Four. They're also famous for doing battle with Galactus. He also shares a connection with another famous Marvel character. There are lots of reasons he could show up. Number 2. Apocalypse. When we were talking about Kang, we talked about how he traveled through history. Well, speaking of characters who had roles in history, one of Kang's time-displaced alternates is called Rama-Tut, who was a pharaoh in ancient Egypt, and he had a bit of a backstory that involved another major villain, the ancient proto-mutant Apocalypse. More than his connection to Kang and the mutants, Apocalypse is also empowered with ancient celestial technology, and the Celestials have had more than a few mentions throughout the MCU, with a major role in the Eternals movie. Also, this major villain is arguably as powerful, if not possibly more powerful, than Thanos in different ways. Actually, speaking of Thanos, Apocalypse may be a bit too much like the Big Chin in terms of stature and the fact that he has his Horsemen of the Apocalypse like Thanos has the Black Order, but he has so much more to offer than that. I also think we gotta get a live-action redemption for this villain after the kind of bad Age of Apocalypse X-Men movie from 2016, but that's just my opinion. Number 1. The Beyonder. The original Secret Wars series, initiated by Marvel Comics in the 80s was spearheaded by a cosmic entity known as the Beyonder, who observed the multiversal heroes and villains and, wishing to know more about human nature and conflict, transported them to an alternate world he created known as Battle World, made out of a mishmash of parts of Earth and other planets in the galaxy. The Beyonder brought together Marvel superheroes and villains onto this world, such as the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and Spider-Man, including antagonists Dr. Octopus, Kang the Conqueror, and most importantly, Molecule Man and Dr. Doom. The threat of multiversal incursions that played a large part in the 2015 Secret Wars has already been established in 2022's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and we can strongly suspect Dr. Doom will be introduced very soon. After Thanos, the MCU needs a main villain with another more original motive. The Beyonder's desire to understand human nature allows for interesting narrative possibilities and philosophical discussions. Why conflict is inevitable, why people always want to achieve something more, and why imperfection makes life worth living are some of the themes the culmination of the MCU's Phase 5 could tackle. Not to mention, Beyonder is leagues and bounds beyond the power of Thanos.
Number 10. Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch isn't being ranked low for hotness, just FYI, as you all know how much I love Wanda just all around, so I would never do that to her, but I did think to rank her lower because I just feel bad that we're always calling her a villain on this channel, especially because, you know, she is a hero, but especially an Avengers villain, as Wanda is also known for being a key member of that team herself. Still, there have been a few times when Wanda has seemingly been at odds against her teammates. There are the times she has struggled to regain or maintain control over herself when Chthon has threatened to possess her, and there's House of M as well as Axis, and in the MCU, the time she mistakenly fought against the Avengers in the beginning of Age of Ultron, and when she caused mayhem without really meaning to in WandaVision, when her grief turned her into a powerful yet misguided villain. Basically, she's been a villain a lot, but I don't want to call her a villain, and I already know that she's hot, so number 10 for Wanda today. Number 9. Maximus the Mad. Maximus might not always be an Avengers villain, but he has definitely worked against them and his brother on more than one occasion. What makes Maximus so attractive? Well, he's definitely one of those tall, dark, and mad types, which honestly, I gotta say, I'm into it. After all, conventional thinking is just so boring and it's so safe, and Maximus is definitely neither of those things. He's not boring and he is not safe. Maximus is also quite intelligent, and while he is often crazy, he has also claimed insanity before as a means of escaping punishment, so he might not be quite as crazy as you think all the time. Not only has he threatened his brother's reign as king of the Inhumans, having usurped him multiple times in the past temporarily, but he also has threatened the Earth in the past. The entire Earth, which also obviously brought him into direct conflict with the Avengers. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you are loving this channel, be sure to hit that thumbs up, be sure to smash that subscribe, you know, do all the cool things that us YouTubers ask you to do. And thank you. Thank you for doing them. It really does help us. So thank you. Number 8. Viper, or rather Madam Hydra as she was once known. Ophelia Sarkinson has not only been a longtime enemy of Captain America in the comics, but is also known for, at times, coming into conflict with the Avengers. In fact, she even attempted to place a spy in their midst, although this only resulted in her spy, who appeared to be Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman, but was actually the Skrull Queen at the time, being recruited to also play double agent for the Avengers and Captain America against both S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra. Didn't quite work out. Ophelia is known for being sneaky, deadly, and manipulative, but she also looks damn good while doing all three. Number 7. Grandmaster. The Grandmaster in the comics is known as one of the Elders of the Universe. He actually made his first appearance in Avengers issue number 69 back in the day. He quickly became known as an Avengers villain when he challenged Kang to a game where they would each pit their own team of champions against one another. Kang chose the Avengers as his champions in the fight, and Grandmaster made his own team himself, dubbing them the Squadron Sinister. You might actually recognize that team, as an alternate version of them also appeared in the comics recently during the Heroes Reborn event, where they were known as the Squadron Supreme. Although Grandmaster isn't particularly sexy in the comics, his MCU counterpart is quite attractive, as he's portrayed by one of the most handsome and charismatic men alive, Jeff Goldblum. And if anyone wants to fight me about that, I'll see you in the comments. Number 6. Dark Avengers. I mean, not all of the Dark Avengers are sexy, but I think overall they're a pretty hot team, especially considering they're made up of some really bad and really deadly people. Among the ranks of the hottest Dark Avengers are Moonstone as Miss Marvel, Bullseye as Hawkeye, Daken as Wolverine, Sentry, Ares, and Yelena Belova, who was affiliated with the team for a time, although it was kinda later revealed that Yelena likely wasn't actually actually Yelena for most or for all of that time. The Dark Avengers is also an attractive group in the sense that they are still playing the role of heroes. Now, they might not always play the role well, but there is something sexy about seeing someone you know as bad playing the part of someone who is heroic. I guess it's just fun to see villains become heroes, or at least, you know, pretend to be heroes. I like when bad people are good, even if they're not really good, you know? Is that a thing? I don't know. Number 5, Queen Veronki. Or Veronke? I never know if I'm saying her name right, so I'm just gonna apologize to the queen if I'm saying it wrong. I think Skrulls are some of the hottest enemies of the Avengers out there, namely because they could shapeshift into whatever hotness they wanted, or that their opponent desired if they so chose. Shapeshifters are always the hottest because all options of beauty are basically possible to them. And beauty, after all, is very much subjective when it comes to what we define it as. It really depends on, you know, your personal preferences. Queen Veronki spent much of her time disguised as Spider-Woman while infiltrating Earth, which I also think is a pretty hot form overall. Although not so hot in the sense that this reveal kind of wreaked havoc with Jessica Drew's character development throughout the recent years. Definitely a hot form, but not a hot thing to do. How dare you do that to Spider-Woman? Oh, Queen Veronki. Number 4, Loki. Real talk, I almost forgot to mention Loki on this list, but fortunately I caught myself before I straight up just left him off. I would have been so disappointed in myself if that had happened. Loki is an amazing villain who is also known for being a sometimes shapeshifter and an all-the-time trickster. Loki has taken on many forms before, and even for a time was known as Lady Loki when he stole the body of Thor's love, Lady Sif. He also posed as Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, attempting to bend the Avengers to his will and create and lead his own team. All in all, Loki is a villain who cannot be trusted. But the fact that almost everything is a game or illusion to them is something that makes Loki so endearing. Even though he's often a liar, you kinda wanna believe him. Loki was so charming, he even fell for a version of himself when he crossed paths with the Loki variant Sylvie in the Loki Disney Plus streaming show. You know also that you're hot if you're falling in love with yourself. Number 3, Ultron. I know this might seem like a weird pick to some, but remember when Ultron was a hot lady? This was during the Ultron Initiative, back when Frank Cho was drawing Ultron and basically decided he wanted to draw a really hot and naked Janet Van Dyne as his Ultron. And honestly, I gotta say, Ultron be looking pretty good here, I cannot deny. Although the reasoning for Ultron wanting to look this way was not quite as solid as the overall appearance of the character. Still, Ultron is kinda hot even when appearing as a masculine automaton. As I've said before in previous lists, I personally think robots deserve love too, and Ultron is really no exception to that rule. Even though, yeah, he does kind of want to destroy all of humanity, but you know, what if we deserve it? And also, what if Ultron just didn't get enough hugs? Did you ever think of that? Maybe if we just gave him some hugs, he'd be good. I'm very optimistic about robots. I'm like, robots don't want to destroy the world, they just want hugs, that's it. Number 2, Enchantress. Enchantress exists to be hot, literally. She is meant to be the perfect woman in terms of her appearance, which allows her often to get what she wants from anyone who might be attracted to her. Now, often in the comics, this means Enchantress will leverage her looks and appearance into manipulating men into doing her bidding or helping her in some other way, by granting her favors or power. However, this doesn't always work in her favor, as just because Enchantress is beautiful and impossibly powerful when it comes to her magical skills, she is simply not the best at everything. Though I would say in most cases she is almost always at least second best, which definitely counts for something and is still pretty impressive. I don't know how I feel about Enchantress's attitude though. I feel like sometimes I'm like, your attitude is not very hot, but you yourself are pretty hot. Also, you're like real powerful, so that's pretty hot. Number 1, Kang. So not only is Kang a hottie in the comics, okay, so maybe he's not quite a hottie in the comics, but he's definitely 100% a hottie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where he's played by Jonathan Majors. Not only did Majors do a great job of introducing us to this enigmatic time-traveling multiversal villain in the season 1 finale of Loki, but he will also be allowing us to fall in love with multiple different Kangs, I'm sure, as we continue to meet him again and again throughout the franchise. After all, the Kang we met wasn't even the most deadly version, and undoubtedly we are going to be in for a real sexy and fun treat when we run into him again, or another version of him, in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I just hope the King truly gets to become the next big bad in the MCU, as he so deserves that. Also, I just want more Jonathan Majors because he's just great, so yes, give me that, please.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Mojo. I'll start this list off with a rather fun one. Not that any villain isn't fun, but when Mojo's involved, it always gets a little too weird in some way. He made his first debut in Longshot issue 3. Mojo is known for using Earth as forms of TV entertainment for the universe. So we're all actors. I'm in your screen right now. I'm actually part of Mojo's universe. I'm not even real. And his power increases the more viewers that he gets for this interdimensional TV show. So if you subscribe and like this video, maybe I'll get more powerful too, who knows? He's part of a race called the Spineless Beings. They're from a planet called Mojo World, of course, inside a pocket dimension called the Mojoverse. So it's all about him, we get it. He messes with the Avengers in a pretty dramatic way as well, especially in Avengers Annual 1. The Avengers of the Supernatural. Wow, there is a title right there. So in this issue, Mojo abducted the Avengers and created another supernatural version of the team. And if that wasn't weird enough, he made them participate in this reality show called Martian Transylvania Superhero Mutant Monster Hunter High School, which is just a mouthful. Basically, the mutants of the Unity Division were goths, the others were football players and cheerleaders, and the Avengers of the Supernatural were nerds. So he likes to play it weird. And before we continue on with this list of Avengers villains, guys, if you want to go ahead and give us more power by giving us a like down there, and if you haven't subscribed already, you might as well click that, and then you can see all our videos pop up. We do all the work for you. We'll just show up in your phone. Number 9, The Leader. Samuel Stearns, aka The Leader, made his first debut in Tales to Astonish issue 62. He was working one night at a chemical research plant, and when he was moving canisters of waste material, one of the canisters broke open, covering him in gamma radiation. God, everybody is so clumsy in comics all the time. Just so many spills. So of course, after the spill, Stearns survived just like Banner did after his gamma accident, but the only difference was it affected him in a much different way. See, he didn't get angrier, he got smarter and smarter, because now his brain could absorb so much more and more information. It actually got to a point where his physical body started to mutate. So now he has this giant green brain head. His head just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It looks like a gushy balloon, just about to pop any second. Of course he's a villain. Look at his head. I mean, no offense, but come on, I'd be upset too. That's all I'm saying. I'd be pretty upset. He started to refer to himself as the leader, using his intellect to become a criminal mastermind, and he clashed with the other Gamma guy, Banner. In fact, he actually ruined Betty and Bruce's wedding once. He's kind of a jerk. But he's gone after the Avengers as well. When the Red Hulk gave Stearns red gamma treatment to enhance him even more, becoming the Red Leader, he became a member of the Thunderbolts. Number 8, the Mandarin. Ah yes, the first time Marvel told us that the popular enhanced individual was actually an actor all along. The Mandarin. He was in Iron Man 3, kind of. I mean, I'm including him on this list because that version wasn't even close to what he's really like. He made his first appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 50. While exploring the inside of a cave in the Valley of the Spirits, he found an alien ship and a passenger still in there as well, named Axon Carr. But while he was there, he also saw 10 rings, these powerful rings, each representing a new power. So he took them, because he's a villain. Then after finishing off the alien pilot, he began to study these rings and he began mastering them as well. So if he wears them all at once, his mind will be reached by the spirits trapped within the rings. Yeah, he's a pretty sick villain. And then in Iron Man 3, his name's Trevor and he just crushes beer. Number 7, Grim Reaper. This next one we thought we were gonna see in WandaVision, but we thought wrong. We thought maybe if it wasn't Mephisto, it's probably Grim Reaper, but we were wrong on both. The Grim Reaper did not show up, but his silhouette did for a hot second, maybe. Eric Williams made his debut back in Avengers issue 52. He's the brother of Simon Williams, aka Wonder Man. He was considered a black sheep of the family, and when he was younger, he accidentally burnt down his house after, you guessed it, being clumsy with chemicals. The usual. So his brother felt responsible for not stopping him or being there for him when watching him. So after that, he began to watch him closely, a little bit too close, because Eric then became rebellious because of the supervision, and then soon he ended up with the Magia in Las Vegas while his brother stayed and took over the family business. So with the business failing, no thanks to Stark being the top dog in innovation, he turns to his brother for some mob help to get things going again. So Simon embezzled money with Eric, but Simon got caught and thrown into the slammer. Went thrown right to jail. So Baron Zemo approached him, asked for help to take out the Avengers, and revenge on Stark was included. So he was like, sure, this sounds like a pretty sweet gig. So then he got turned into Wonder Man, but he ended up saving the Avengers from Zemo's trap. He turned, he went good guy. But his brother, Eric, he heard of Simon's untimely departure, so he got angry and felt tremendous guilt after this. So he contacted the Tinkerer, who gave him a scythe. Then he took on the name of Grim Reaper, and voila, we now have a pretty badass villain. Number 6, Enchantress, aka Amora. She made her first debut in Journey into Mystery issue 103, and she has a love-hate relationship with Thor. And I'm not gonna lie, she's got a pretty sweet gig. She's got multiple mansions throughout the 9 realms, and she can make gold and diamonds with her tears. So even if she gets stood up on prom, she's gonna cry a few diamonds, and then she has more bling for the next date. So it's a win-win. She's really good at seducing people as well, like Scourge, for example. She would seduce him into helping her with her evil plans. But Amora wouldn't follow through with her side of the deal. She would just play hard to get, and she would mess with his mind and his heart. Now in the comics, she was sent by Odin to take out Jane Foster, but when she tried to attack Jane, of course, her love Thor intervened, and that's when she was banished to Earth by Odin. And then her next logical step as a villain is to join the Masters of Evil and get in line for taking down Thor or any of his annoying super teammates. Her tool is seduction, just one kiss, and that's all it takes to make you fall under her control. She doesn't have too much experience with hand-to-hand combat because she doesn't really need it. She just gets other dudes to fight her battles for her. What a boss. Number 5, Kang. This guy we can actually look forward to knowing more about soon, as he's confirmed for the next Ant-Man sequel with actor Jonathan Majors set to play him. But just who is Kang the Conqueror? Why is this a big deal for the Avengers? Well, he made his first appearance in Avengers issue 8 back in 1964, and Kang has seen many centuries. His powers allow him to travel through time, and his futuristic suit of armor is built with weapons that can take on beings from any of those timelines. He's super smart and of course travels with armies, with each warrior equipped with the same armor and weaponry, so the fights aren't exactly easy by any means. The time travel stuff also doesn't come without consequence either. See, as Kang travels more and more through time, he creates time-displaced duplicates, and with the cosmic multiversal route that Marvel's going with now in the MCU, and especially with Loki's show, we could probably look forward to some more mind-bending battles. Number 4, Taskmaster. Taskmaster made his first comic book debut in Avengers 195. Anthony Masters is a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, of course, who turned into a mercenary and assassin. Although he is one guy, he has this ability where he can copy your every move. So he can replicate your physical skills. He has photographic reflexes, so he can watch Black Widow take down an evil henchman, and bam, he's got it locked into his brain. He knows how to do the same type of combat as well. He's actually the villain of the Black Widow movie, but that has yet to come out due to COVID delays, so the general public doesn't really know how cool this guy is yet. He became a teacher based out of the Taskmaster's Academy to train villains and agents, one of those agents being US agent John Walker, who is currently turning heads for all the wrong reasons in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now in the comics, it was actually Taskmaster who taught Walker how to throw Cap's shield so well. In Avengers issue 196, he was able to capture Yellow Jacket, the Wasp, and Ant-Man, and then when the rest of the team showed up, he took them on as well, only being defeated because he could not predict the movements of the robot Jocasta. Otherwise, it's a tough battle, this one for sure. Number 3, Mephisto. While on the topic of characters that we wanted to see in the MCU, I of course gotta talk about the devil himself. He made his first appearance as a serpent in Bible Tales for Young Folk issue 1, but he made his first full appearance as Mephisto in Silver Surfer issue 3. I don't think I have to explain too much about this guy or why he's a threat. I mean, he's Satan. He's the literal devil of the Marvel Universe. He lives comfortably in hell with lesser demons that serve him. The reason we thought we were gonna get Mephisto in WandaVision goes back to something he did in the comics, which was kind of a big deal. The comic was Avengers West Coast Volume 2, issue 52. We find out the truth behind Scarlet Witch's children, Billy and Tommy, who were in WandaVision. Now it turns out the 5 pieces of Pandemonium's soul were actually Mephisto. So Mephisto tricked Pandemonium and gathered beings possessing the appropriate fragments, and 2 of those 5 fragments just happened to be children of the Scarlet Witch and the Vision. So when Pandemonium arrived, he took the kids, which in turn gave Mephisto full strength, and this left Scarlet Witch having a breakdown. Mephisto's awesome. His deals are always crazy. Like after the comic Civil War, when everybody knew Spider-Man's identity, Spider-Man had to make a deal with Mephisto in order to save Aunt May because she got shot because he revealed his name to the public. So he's pretty wild. That's just one of many horrible deals. Number 2, MODOK. Making its first appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 93, MODOK was created by Dr. George Tarleton. He had worked with the team recently to create the Cosmic Cube, but the scientist supreme, Lyle Getz, figured the next logical step was figuring out a way to understand the powers inside said cube. So enter Project MODOK. Spelled with a C at the end, not a K, that's important. So MODOK stood for Mental Organism Designed Only for Computing. Sounds like the perfect tool to analyze and probe this cosmic cube. So they grabbed that scientist George that I mentioned and altered him into this big-headed supercomputer. With a brain too big for his body, they had to give him a hover chair, which is referred to as the Doomsday Chair. I mean, he's already a villain. You guys are just kind of making this happen for him. The scientists did not prepare that with great power comes great superiority, so it wasn't long before MODOK overtook his masters, changed that last letter from a C to a K, making his new, more suitable name for the list, MODOK. which stood for mental organism designed only for killing. He's the big bad villain in the new Avengers PS4 game, and he's as crazy as it sounds in that game as well. And finally, number 1, Morgan Le Fay. Now, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe leaning into the witch madness for the conclusion of WandaVision, we might actually get to see Morgan Le Fay on the big screen soon enough. She made her first appearance in Black Knight issue 1 back in 1955, and she's been a recurring villain to the Avengers in the comics for a while now. And when the Dark Avengers were formed by Norman Osborn, Morgan was their first enemy to face off against. She's a powerful spellcaster, one of those spells being reality warping by using these Norn stones. So she packs a punch. Elizabeth Hurley actually plays Morgan Le Fay in the show Runaways, and she's great when it comes to these witchy, devilish roles. I mean, she literally played the devil in the movie Bedazzled as well, which is pretty funny. She was made for the role, it seems. Kicking off the list at number 10, Sandman. William Baker entered the world of comics in 1963 with Amazing Spider-Man issue 4. He was seen as one of the main villains in Spider-Man 3, and yes, he was at one point an Avenger. Who knew? So when Flint Marko held the mantle of Sandman, he bumped into the Thing, and they had a little heart-to-heart, a little chat about life and how to use your abilities perhaps for, for good. So he started to help Spider-Man a bit here and there, and then in Avengers issue 329, Captain America announced a new Avengers team, and on that roster was the Sandman. He was one of the 7 reserve members. He of course didn't last because, well, he was a reserve member for one, and coming from the villain side already, I'm sure he had one foot out the door anyways. Shame. And before we continue on with this list, guys, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that like button down below because those little thumbs up are great for the page and great for our studio. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. Now back to some Avengers who became villains. Number 9, Sentry. Making his first appearance in Sentry issue 1, of course, Robert Reynolds was a struggling addict who made his way into a laboratory and discovered something called the Golden Sentry Serum. So of course he consumed it, and then he got the surprise of a lifetime when he was then given the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. That's a lot of power. That plus a homemade costume equals a brand new superhero. Robert fought alongside the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, then the new Avengers. Things changed for Robert when Norman Osborn decided to put together a little team of his own, the Dark Avengers. So Sentry was also once a Horseman of Death, serving alongside Banshee, Grim Reaper, and Daken. He even considered himself as the heir to Apocalypse at one point, so definitely not an Avenger anymore, for sure. Number 8, Namor. King Namor is of course Marvel's version of Aquaman. He's the king of the seas, and he's also not a fan of metahumans, surprisingly. He mostly would go head to head with Black Panther and Wakanda. He wasn't a fan of Wakanda. He often attacked it quite a bit. He was asked to join the Avengers back in 1963 in Avengers issue 16, but he declined. Too cool for school. We get it. All right, cool. He did join for a brief amount of time though, but when the Avengers vs. X-Men happened, he stood with the X-Men and he fought Luke Cage and the Thing. What a traitor. I mean, he's not the worst, but if you're not with the Avengers, you're clearly against them, especially after you've helped them out for a bit and then you change your mind. Come on, dude. Number 7. The Incredible Hulk. So Thor Ragnarok was loosely based off the Planet Hulk storyline. I say loosely because, well, the comics, that story didn't end up going so well, obviously. Because on Sakaar, the rocket that he arrived in ended up blowing to smithereens, causing some casualties that left the Hulk a little heartbroken, to say the least. So he rolls his shoulders back a few times, and then he heads back to Earth, and thus begins the World War Hulk storyline. He just destroys everybody. It's so scary. I mean, all the heroes that Earth has come to love just in the path of this death train. Like, he locks the Illuminati in Madison Square Garden and then makes them fight to the death. It's like Madison Square Up Garden. I mean, once you spend enough time on Sakaar, I guess it becomes second nature. I don't know. The whole story is a bloody good mess. It's great seeing the panic on the Avengers' faces the entire time because they know that they're screwed, and that's what makes it real and scary. Number 6, Sabretooth. Victor Creed made his debut in Iron Fist issue 14, and he's been known as one of Wolverine's biggest rivals. But during the Avengers X-Men Axis storyline, the Red Skull stole the brain of Charles Xavier, and he planned to wipe out all of mutant kind. And then in book 2, we see the inversion, where good goes bad and bad goes good. Interesting time, because Doctor Doom and Scarlet Witch cast a spell, so now Sabretooth was on the good side. So after the dust settled, Iron Man made it so that Sabretooth wouldn't flip back, so Sabretooth joined the Avengers Unity Division. This didn't last forever, and recently in House of X issue 6, Sabretooth faced trial among the Quiet Council, and let's just say he ended up swallowed by Krakoa below the surface, where he's trapped in a state of permanent stasis for the rest of his life. How comfortable. I mean, he kind of made it easy for them too. He clearly didn't fight for his case. Number 5, Hawkeye. In the MCU, Hawkeye's had it pretty rough. I mean, by the time Avengers Endgame rolled out, Clint had lost his entire family, and then 5 years after Thanos snapped his fingers, we catch up with him in Tokyo, and he's not the same guy that we once knew. Now he's taken heads and he's taken names. We get our first look at Ronan. Now, I know that Natasha meets up with him and they have a beautiful moment, and then he rejoins the team. He even volunteers to test the time travel tech himself. But if we look back at Avengers 1, Hawkeye is a villain for like most of that movie. He turns evil before the opening title even pops up on screen. He's the guy who took down the helicarrier. He almost killed everybody on that boat. Now I know Loki had a scepter and that caused it, so if we look at Avengers 1 and Avengers Endgame, I think it's safe to meet in the middle and say that the MCU Hawkeye has been somewhat of a Avenger who turned into a villain, at least for a bit. Number 4, Quicksilver. Pietro Maximoff is the twin brother of Wanda Maximoff, and in Avengers West Coast issue 57 back in 1965, he joined the team. Pietro has been trouble for the team for a long time. I mean, he convinced Wanda to do what she did in House of M. He's framed the Avengers for treason, and he has no problem using pieces of Terrigen to give his daughter Luna special abilities, even though he knows he shouldn't do that. Also, that whole thing with Layla Miller after House of M, where he saved her life just so he can be the one to take her out, believing that she was responsible for the House of M event. Yeah, it's safe to say he went from Avenger to villain. Like, those are just 3 out of many things. In West Coast Avengers 33, Magneto's bloodline got the best of him, and he got fellow Avengers captured by the communist gang. Fastest guy ever, but makes the most mistakes. I don't understand. Number 3, The Vision. Making his glorious debut in Avengers issue 57, The Vision is a synthezoid, and in the comics he was created by Ultron using parts of the original Human Torch and the mind of Wonder Man. Just bam, smack together. He turned on his original creator, Phineas Horton, and he joined the Avengers. Nice. And then in the MCU, he's created as Ultron's new body, but with the addition of the Mind Stone and a little bit of Jarvis, we have an android Avenger. Also nice. But during the Secret Empire storyline, Vision was part of Hydra's Avengers when they were taking over the world, all from an AI virus. Gotta get that firewall installed, my friend. Arnim Zola was the one to blame for that. So who knows, maybe now with the White Vision being free in the MCU and pretty much reborn, his firewall probably isn't the best either. Also, it's confusing because it appears that Vision gets all of his memories back, but then he flies away and then he's not to be seen for the rest of the show. So clearly something's up here. I'm betting the MCU does him dirty. Maybe they reprogram him to make him evil or something. Or he might become Ultron. That was a big theory for WandaVision. We'll see. Number 2, Captain America. There are a couple lines from Steve Rogers that fans will remember that took place in the MCU, like Avengers Assemble, that is America's ass, but the line Hail Hydra was followed by a roar of applause on opening night of Endgame. Why? Because not only does he use his post-Avengers knowledge to obtain the scepter, which in that of itself is already pretty sweet, but because the audience expects another cool elevator fight and Steve outsmarts us. But the line Hail Hydra comes right from the comics, and a bit of a darker scenario. The last words of Captain America Steve Rogers were that of Hail Hydra, and fans were not happy. This was huge news. People were pretty upset. Readers were sending in death threats. Like, could you imagine? The 2017 series Secret Empire concluded that bad Captain America was a double and that the good guy was locked in the cosmic cube. Okay, solid save, but those images of evil Steve will live in our heads rent-free, so thank you for that. And finally, number 1, Scarlet Witch. Of course, I'm saving her for last, of course. She's the daughter of Magneto and the twin brother of Quicksilver, aka Pietro Maximoff. Now, she was on her father's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but at one point she did of course join the Avengers as well. She's one of the biggest Marvel characters ever, and during the events of M-Day, she spoke those 3 words, no more mutants, and just like that, a mass amount of mutants were depowered or wiped out. That large number being 986,618, only leaving a couple hundred left. That's crazy, that's like Thanos level destruction almost. And then in the MCU as well, we just watched Wanda become a villain over a 9-week period. She had a mental breakdown similar to M-Day, and she trapped Westview in her hex. Now, of course, she frees everybody and things look pretty back to normal, kind of, by the end of the show. But with that after credit scene of her studying the Darkhold and with the given knowledge that Wanda is in the next Doctor Strange movie, she's for sure going to become a villain. Even for a little bit, she'll be a villain, for sure. I can't wait to see what else she does. She looked like she was studying up pretty fast while she was sipping tea on her doorstep, so I don't know. Her mind's crazy. She can do anything she wants. Well guys, there you have it. Which of these Avengers are the most forgivable? Honestly, Wanda might be the MCU's big bad villain for the next movie, but that's fine. It's not exactly her fault. She didn't go out and look for these powers. She was forced to get them, and now she's studying a book that she doesn't really know a lot about. More than fair, it happens. But it's also the Book of the Damned, so maybe we're all I've been your host, Taylor McWaters. Thank you so much for watching Top 10 Nerd, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace. Number 5, Hawkeye. I always sound like I'm saying hot guy when I say that sometimes. Number 6, a hot man. Yep.